We live in a time when it seems like the world is spinning out of control, when everything around us feels chaotic, uncertain, and at times, downright frightening. But in the midst of all this turmoil, there's a truth we often overlook. A truth that's easy to forget, especially when the storm feels overwhelming. The truth is that there's something bigger at play. Something far greater than the noise, the fear, and the confusion that surrounds us. And that truth is this: God's favor is at work in our lives, even when we don't see it. We've all faced times when we felt like the odds were stacked against us, when the challenges seemed too big to overcome, when the doors seemed locked and the path forward uncertain. Maybe you're in a season like that right now. Maybe you've been asking yourself, why is this happening to me? Where's the favor in this? Where's God in all of this? It's natural to feel that way. But here's the thing: favor doesn't always show up in the way we expect it to. It doesn't always look like what we want it to look like. Sometimes God's favor isn't about things going smoothly or everything falling into place. Sometimes it's about being able to stand firm in the storm, knowing that no matter how hard it gets, God is with you and His favor is carrying you through. Sometimes God's favor comes in the form of the strength to endure, the resilience to keep going, and the wisdom to navigate the challenges that life throws your way. And that's where the shock comes in. Because here's the thing: God's favor is often unexpected. It doesn't always fit our idea of what favor should look like. It doesn't always make sense in the moment. But if we're willing to trust, if we're willing to have faith, we'll see that God is up to something far greater than we could ever imagine. Imagine for a moment, you've been waiting for a breakthrough, praying for an opportunity, for a door to open. You've done everything right. You've worked hard. You've been faithful. You've persevered. And yet, the breakthrough hasn't come. But then, one day, out of nowhere, God opens a door you didn't expect. It's not the door you thought you were going to walk through, but it's the door that leads to something even greater, something you couldn't have planned or prepared for. That's favor. That's God's shockingly good favor at work in your life. And it's not just in the big moments. Sometimes God's favor shows up in the small things, in the moments when you least expect it. Maybe you're facing a challenge at work and someone unexpectedly comes alongside you to offer support. Maybe you're dealing with a personal struggle and out of nowhere, a word of encouragement or a kind gesture lifts your spirit. Maybe you're feeling isolated and then you receive a message, a phone call, a connection that reminds you that you're not alone. That's God's favor, working in ways we might not always notice, but it's there. The truth is, favor doesn't always come in the form of things going our way. Sometimes it comes in the form of protection, in the form of delay, in the form of something that doesn't make sense in the moment, but will make sense down the road. God's timing is perfect, even when we don't understand it. And that's one of the hardest lessons to learn, isn't it? We want things now. We want the breakthrough now. We want the answer now. But sometimes God says, wait, trust me. My favor is working behind the scenes. That doesn't mean that it's easy to wait. It doesn't mean that we won't have moments of doubt or frustration or confusion. But what it does mean is that we can have peace in the waiting. We can rest knowing that God hasn't forgotten us, that His favor is still at work even when we can't see it. It's like planting a seed in the ground. You don't see the fruit right away. You don't see the tree growing immediately, but you trust that the process is happening, even if it's happening beneath the surface. And here's the thing: God's favor isn't just for a select few. It's not for the perfect or the perfectly righteous. It's for anyone who is willing to receive it. It's for you. No matter where you've been, no matter what mistakes you've made, no matter how far you feel you've fallen, God's favor is still available to you. In fact, He's about to shock you with it. That's the beauty of God's grace. He doesn't wait for us to be perfect to bless us. He blesses us even in our imperfection. But here's where it gets really exciting. When God's favor shows up in your life, it's not just for you, it's for those around you as well. The blessing isn't just something you receive, but something that overflows to those in your circle. When God opens doors for you, it often has a ripple effect. Your breakthrough can be someone else's encouragement. Your victory can inspire others to keep going. That's the power of God's favor. It doesn't just impact your life. It impacts the lives of those around you. So let me ask you this. What if you started expecting God's favor in every area of your life? What if you began to see every challenge, every setback, every waiting period, not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity for God to show up in a way that will leave you amazed? What if you started looking for the favor even when things weren't going the way you planned? What if you began to trust that God is always working even when you can't see it? I believe that if you begin to see life through the lens of God's favor, you'll start to experience it in ways you never expected. You'll start to see doors open where there were once walls. You'll begin to notice opportunities where there once were obstacles. And you'll start to walk with a confidence that doesn't come from your circumstances, but from the knowledge that God is with you and He's about to shock you with His favor. So don't give up. Don't lose hope. Because even when you can't see it, God's favor is working on your behalf. He's not finished with you yet. He's just getting started. You see, the thing about favor is that it's not always going to come in a package that looks like you expected. It's easy to think that favor means everything will go your way, that things will be smooth, no bumps, no delays, no obstacles. But that's not always how it works. God's favor is so much deeper than just surface-level success. It's about the transformation that happens in the process, the strength you build, the character you develop, and the wisdom you gain. Have you ever noticed that the most powerful testimonies often come from the toughest trials? Think about it. When you hear someone's story of breakthrough, of how they came through a season of difficulty, the victory doesn't seem as sweet if they haven't been through the fire. It's the struggle that makes the victory so meaningful. And sometimes, the favor that God gives us is wrapped in challenges, wrapped in discomfort, wrapped in moments that feel like they're too much to bear. But if we hold on, if we press through, the favor on the other side is far greater than anything we could have imagined. Consider this: when God is working in your life, He's not just preparing you for the next blessing. He's preparing you to handle that blessing. He's building you up, strengthening your foundation so that when the favor comes, you're ready for it. It's like training for a marathon. You don't just wake up one day and run 26 miles. It takes months, sometimes years of preparation, of pushing through discomfort, of training your mind and your body. And in the same way, God is preparing you for what's ahead. He's getting you ready for the level of favor He's about to release in your life. But here's the beauty of it. Even in those moments of struggle, God is still with you. He's not distant. He's not abandoning you. He's right there in the midst of it all. In fact, sometimes the very things we think are setbacks are actually setups for something greater. You see, God's favor doesn't always come through perfect circumstances. It comes through situations that look impossible to the human eye, but to God, they're opportunities for His glory to shine. Think about the people in the Bible who experienced God's favor in ways they never expected. Joseph was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, forgotten in prison, and yet all of those seemingly bad situations were God's way of preparing him for the palace. David was just a shepherd boy, forgotten by his family, but God saw him as a king in the making. And Moses, he was on the run, a fugitive, living in exile, but God used his story to deliver an entire nation. In each of these stories, we see the same theme. God's favor wasn't just about the end result, it was about the process, about the journey. Every single challenge, every moment of hardship was part of the story that led to a greater purpose. And guess what? The same is true for you. Maybe you're in the middle of a tough season right now. Maybe you're wondering where the favor is because all you see are challenges. But what if this moment is just part of God's plan? What if this season of struggle is actually a setup for the breakthrough you've been praying for? What if, right now, God is positioning you for something bigger than you could have ever imagined? I know it's hard to see that in the moment, when the bills are piling up, when the relationships are strained, when the dreams seem far out of reach. It's easy to get discouraged. It's easy to think that maybe God has forgotten you. But I'm here to remind you today, He hasn't forgotten you. In fact, He's preparing you, even when it feels like you're stuck. And that's where the shock of His favor comes in. God's favor is not just about what happens on the outside, it's about what happens on the inside. It's about changing your heart, changing your perspective, and changing your expectations. Because when you begin to expect God's favor, you start to see it in places you never looked before. You start to notice how the little things are actually big things, how the small blessings are really big breakthroughs in disguise. And here's the kicker. When you start to recognize God's favor in your life, you begin to walk in a confidence that the world can't take away. You stop looking at your circumstances and start looking at the God who is bigger than your circumstances. You stop measuring your worth by what you have or don't have, by the jobs you've lost, or the relationships that have fallen apart, and you start to measure your worth by the fact that the creator of the universe has his hand on your life. That's favor. But here's the thing, favor doesn't just come with blessings. It comes with responsibility. When God gives you favor, he's not just giving it to you for your own benefit. He's giving it to you so that you can be a blessing to others. Favor isn't just for you to sit back and enjoy the ride. It's for you to make an impact, to help others along the way, to share the blessings you've received. Think about it. When Joseph was elevated to a position of power in Egypt, it wasn't just so he could live a life of luxury. It was so he could save his family and ultimately an entire nation. When David became king, it wasn't just for his own glory. It was so he could lead the people of Israel into victory. And when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, it wasn't just for his own freedom. It was for the freedom of an entire nation. In the same way, the favor God places on your life is meant to be shared, meant to be used to lift up others. And that's one of the most powerful ways to experience God's favor. When you start using your favor to bless others, when you start using the resources, opportunities, and gifts God has given you to serve those around you, you'll find that the favor just keeps increasing. Because God sees a heart that is willing to give, to serve, to bless. And here's the part that might shock you. Sometimes the greatest acts of favor come when you least expect it. When you're giving, when you're serving, when you're focused on others, that's when God shows up in ways that leave you in awe. You might be out there helping someone else, and out of nowhere, God brings the very breakthrough you've been waiting for. His favor has a way of showing up at the most unexpected times, and often it's in the most unexpected way. So let me challenge you. What if you started looking for ways to bless others right where you are? What if you took the focus off of your own needs for just a moment and started looking for someone else to lift up? What if you began to trust that as you bless others, God's favor would keep flowing into your own life? Here's the thing about God's favor. It's not just about big, life-changing moments. It's about the daily experiences where we see his hand at work, guiding us, protecting us, and blessing us. It's easy to focus on the dramatic breakthroughs, the moments where everything shifts in an instant, but God's favor often operates in the quiet, everyday moments. That's where you start to see the power of his presence in your life. When you open your eyes to the little blessings, the hidden opportunities, the subtle nudges that he's giving you. It's about the moments when you're sitting in traffic and you're frustrated, but somehow you don't miss the exit you needed to take because something told you to stay in the lane just a little longer. It's about the times when you've had a tough day at work and someone out of the blue sends you an encouraging message or offers to buy you lunch. It's the times when you feel like you're running on empty, but somehow you find the energy to keep going, to push through, because God's favor is sustaining you in ways you can't even explain. And here's something even more important to remember. God's favor isn't just a one-time deal. It doesn't come and go depending on your circumstances or how good you think you've been. No, God's favor is continuous. It's a constant flow, a stream of blessings that doesn't run dry. And the more you step into that stream, the more you start to see it flooding your life. But here's the challenge. In a world that constantly tells us to chase success, to seek approval, and to compete for attention, we can easily lose sight of the fact that God's favor isn't something we have to earn. It's something we receive. The world tells us that we have to work hard to get ahead, that we have to prove ourselves to be worthy of blessings. But God's favor works in the opposite direction. It's not about striving. It's about trusting that God's grace is sufficient for every area of your life. God isn't waiting for you to be perfect before he blesses you. He's not sitting on the sidelines waiting for you to jump through the right hoops. He's already given you favor because you're his child. You don't have to earn it. You just have to receive it. And the moment you begin to receive it, you'll see your whole perspective shift. You'll stop looking at your struggles as signs of failure and start seeing them as opportunities for God to show up in ways you never imagined. But here's where it gets even more profound. When you truly understand that God's favor isn't something you can earn, you begin to operate differently. You stop measuring your success by the world's standards, by how much you have, by how much you achieve, or by how much recognition you receive. And you start to measure it by the peace in your heart, by the joy in your soul, by the way you're able to serve others with love and kindness. That's the kind of success that God celebrates. It's not about having it all. It's about being content with what you have, knowing that God has more in store for you than you could ever ask or imagine. And this is where the shock of His favor really hits. It's not just about getting what you want. It's about receiving what you need at the perfect time in the perfect way. It's about being in a place of surrender where you trust that God knows exactly what you need even before you ask for it. That's favor that blows your mind because it's so much more than you could have planned. Now let me ask you something. What if you started to view every day as an opportunity to receive God's favor? What if you stopped waiting for the big, dramatic moments of breakthrough and started recognizing the small, quiet blessings that God is giving you each and every day? What if you stopped trying to control everything and started trusting that God is already working behind the scenes for your good? Imagine how different your life would look if you began to expect favor, not just in the big moments, but in the everyday ones. This doesn't mean that life will always be easy or that you won't face hardship. Life will still have its challenges. But when you start to recognize God's favor in the midst of those challenges, you'll be able to walk through them with a different perspective. You'll be able to hold your head up high, knowing that God is with you, that His favor is on you, and that He's about to show you something you couldn't have seen on your own. In fact, some of the greatest displays of God's favor often come in the most unexpected places. When you least expect it, God will open doors you didn't even know existed. He'll put people in your path who will help you in ways you never imagined. He'll provide for you in moments when you're sure there's no way out. And He'll give you the strength to keep going, even when everything else tells you to give up. You may not always see it, you may not always understand it, but God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating every detail of your life. He's arranging things in your favor, even when you don't feel it, even when it doesn't make sense, because God's favor doesn't depend on your circumstances. It depends on His love for you. And that love is unshakable, unwavering, and unconditional. Now, as we wrap this up, I want to remind you of something important. Favor isn't just about you. It's about others too. When God pours favor into your life, He's not doing it just for your benefit. He's doing it so you can be a light to others, so you can serve, so you can share the blessings He's given you. The more you share, the more He'll continue to pour into your life. So let me encourage you today. Expect God's favor. Look for it in the small things. Recognize it in the moments when you least expect it, and when it shows up, because it will. Don't hold on to it. Pass it on. Share it with others. Be a reflection of that favor, and watch how it changes not only your life, but the lives of those around you. Because God's favor, when embraced, has the power to impact the world in ways you can't even imagine. And finally, remember this. You are not alone. God's favor is on you. Right now, in this moment. And He's about to shock you with more than you could ever hope for. Keep trusting, keep expecting, and watch what He does next.